The Gospel according to Luke, chapter 8, verses 43 to 48. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." This particular miracle of healing in the ministry of Jesus is about a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years with the disease, and she touched the garment of Jesus and became healed instantly. The last Sunday that we talked about a man who had been waiting at a pool to get healing from the water, and he could not get into the water when the water was stirred because there was nobody to get him in the water. So he said, if only somebody could help. And in this particular miracle of healing of Jesus, this woman was not really looking for anyone else for her to help. She was thinking that if only I could touch the garment of Jesus. And then the healing came instantly. Faith is a personal faith. You don't depend on somebody else's faith for your salvation or your healing or anything else. Yes, we go and pray for people. We can pray for each other. But it is faith of that person also that matters. If I believe that I can get healing from Jesus, I will receive healing from Jesus. Trust in Jesus. So this woman honestly believed that he's not waiting for anybody else. He had been waiting for 12 years, going doctors after doctors after doctors, probably. And she could not get healing. And finally said, maybe I will touch the garment of Jesus. In spite of her limitation as a woman with this kind of disease, particularly they are considered to be religiously unclean when you have a disease like that. The church did not want them at that time. You are not allowed to go to church with a disease like the leprosy, bleeding, anything that is contagious. You are supposed to be quarantined like we used to do in the pandemic time. And they have a place for that outside the city. So this woman probably was in hiding, or she probably did not. She probably decided to take a bold step, courageously came there to see if I can get that healing. And the problem with this woman was she was limited with so many things. First of all, she is a woman. A woman is not supposed to touch the garment of a Jewish prophet, and that's what Jesus was there, according to what they believed. They would not touch that without their permission. And then she was also a woman with a disease like this. So she was supposed to be quarantined somewhere else, and here she is in the midst of the crowd. That is another strike against her. Because of all of these things that she did, if she got caught by the religious leaders, the sentencing for that punishment would be stoning to death. That is what she was probably thinking at that time. Anyway, I'm going to die. So let me touch Jesus and die if that happens. That's probably what prompted her. So this bold woman courageously came through this crowd and touched the garment of Jesus in spite of her limitations. Many times we feel ourselves limited by many things. We think that we are old, and I think that too. We're getting old. And we think that we can't do certain things because of our age. Some things are true. But many things are not true because we have the will to do it and trust in God. We can do certain things that God wants us to do in spite of our age. John Wesley was in his 80s when he died, and he was still preaching 6 days a week. and going from places to places. So it is not, we know a lot of people like that who are old in their old age, that is used by God. But, or we have other limitations like, I have family issues, or I have to take care of certain things, or I don't have time for this. Well, we all can do these things with our limitations if we trust in God and give ourselves to the hands of God. So this woman was proving that even with her limitations, she took a bold step. Unlike the other person who was at the pool, waiting for somebody to help him, this woman actually tried to do something about herself. She decided to go to Jesus. And that was honored, and Jesus healed her and sent her in peace. When we feel ourselves victimized like that, remember that we are not alone. All of us go through all these kind of limitations one way or other. So don't be thinking that we are by ourselves, by alone. Our deficiencies and our weaknesses should not define us who we are. Don't let the limitations define us. Maybe we are old, maybe we are weak, maybe we are sick with certain disease. But let us not make that disease or sickness or our situation define us and keep us limited so that we cannot receive the blessing that God has for us. Let us take the bold step of faith, going into the crowd and touch the garment of Jesus and tell him, Jesus, we know you are powerful. You have the authority to heal me. You have the authority to take control of my situation. You have the power to bring a resolution to my problem, whatever it be. Your families, your issues with the church, or issues with the friends, or whatever it is. God can take care of the problem if we give it in the hands of Jesus. It may just touch the garment of Jesus. That's what she did. If I may just touch his garments. Our attitude towards our limitations determines whether or not we can go past and go beyond them. A disabled woman was once told that she could never escape from her own prison of pain and weakness. The doctors told her, you have to live this pain for the rest of your life. We have heard that several times. I've heard that several times from doctors. We go to them and say, well, sorry, some of those diseases are like that. But this woman said, oh, well, doctor, there's a lot of living I can find with my limitations. If you don't wear yourself out fighting them, let us give it to the hands of God rather than fighting it ourselves. We can do a lot of living in joy even in the midst of our pain. Helen Keller, who was deaf and blind from birth. And she was faced with many deficiencies that I don't have to tell you. But she said, face your deficiencies and acknowledge them. But do not let them master you. If I, who is deaf and blind, find life interesting and enjoyable, how much more you can gain by the use of your 5 senses. At least we have some of those senses on. We haven't lost our sight, we haven't lost our hearing, even though it's probably a little weaker. But still we have those. So we can use whatever we have and be thankful for all of those blessings. The thankfulness, the gratefulness of what we have. We can see, we can walk, we can touch, we can feel. We can do a lot of things that some people can't do. So let us use those things that we have rather than looking at our limitations that, I can't do this because I have that. Look at what we have and then use it for God's glory and the blessing of others. Then God will guide us, and like Helen Keller has said. Paul had a problem in his body. You all know that. He had a thorn in his flesh, that is called. We don't know what exactly that was. Some people say it was his blindness. He could not see. Some people say that it was some kind of a pain that he has been going through. But whatever that thorn in the flesh that he was talking about in the book of 2 Corinthians, he said, God has given me this thorn in the flesh to keep me from getting puffed up. That's what he said. All right. God has given me this pain in my flesh so that it will keep me from getting puffed up. I like that. Sometimes my pain keep me from getting puffed up. Don't we get puffed up a lot? Amen. We think that we are greater than what we are really. But we are not. But some of these weaknesses teach us those lessons, saying that, hey, you think you are so invincible, you think that you are all powerful, but you are not. Here is some pain that you probably need to acknowledge and understand that we are not all puffed up. We cannot all get puffed up like that. And then God gave him a promise. God told him, even with your pain, my grace is all that you need. And my grace is sufficient for you because my grace and my power work in your weaknesses. God's grace and his power become powerful in our weakness. That is what Jesus promised us. So look for God in our limitations, and he will take the rest of it. The great thing about our limitations is that they get our focus on someone greater than ourselves, which is God. That is, sometimes we need that kind of situations to focus more on God than on ourselves. We look away from superficial stuff and look at the supernatural stuff and center on things that really matters. They give us a different perspective of life that others don't have. Then in turn leads to true contentment and satisfaction and happiness. And Steve Jobs, the Apple founder, owner, you remember him? He died very young of cancer. But he was very, very eloquent towards the last few months of his life. And he used to say that the last days of his life are stressful because of his pains and other things that he had to go through. But he thought those were the most valuable days of his life that he enjoyed, even when he was dying. He was not a believer, I don't think, but how much more as a believers that we can do that? Even when we know that our days are limited in this world, we can find peace and joy and enjoy our lives rather than looking at our limitations and be conquered by them and be defined by them. Faith is the victory that overcomes everything. It says that in 1 John chapter 5, he writes, our faith is the victory that overcomes the world. No matter what we go through, our faith is victorious over those problems. Many people that you probably know, like Helen Keller, there was a woman in Georgia that I probably shared that with you from Athens, Georgia. She lives in Snellville. She used to live in Snellville, who lost both her one arm and her leg when she was in college. If I remember her name, probably you will remember Amy Copeland in Snellville. We used to live closer by that at that time in Lilburn when this happened. She lost one of her arms and one of her legs. And she was put on a wheelchair because she had a flesh-eating bacteria when she was in a stream or something that she was doing some outdoor activities. And nobody could find it until it was too late and they had cut her limbs off. But she, in her 20s, in her doing her degree work, she finished her degree, she went on to the master's degree with all her limitations, and she's running a charity organization now where she works with people who have these limitations and giving them wheelchairs and training them how to overcome their limitations when you don't have certain limbs or certain capacities that you've lost. He's doing a great ministry. So like that, we can be fruitful in the hands of God even with the limitations that we have, if we look beyond our limitations and focus on God, who is greater than ourselves. Don't be defined or overtaken by the limitations and the problems that we have. Look to Jesus, who can take control of our situation. Like this woman who has been healed by the touch of the garment of Jesus. We can go to him and touch his garment in faith. He will never forsake us nor leave us. Amen. He is always there willing to take care of our situations. We trust in a living God who is always there. Many people think that God is a passive God. He sits there and watches over everything that's happening and sits there doing nothing. No, he's an active God. He's active in our lives. Yes. He's active in our church. He's active in our society. He's active in our nation. Yes. He's active in the events of the world today, that he knows what is happening to the world. Amen. So don't be alarmed. No, don't be alarmed of what happens. He knows and he will intervene and he will act according to his time and his purpose. We don't have to worry about things. Let us be joyful and rejoice in hope that there is a living God who is in control. and touch his garment so that we can be healed, whatever we are going through. May the good Lord bless us with these words as we go from this place.